Hello friends, how are you today? It's Coach Jessica, and wanted to first of all make sure that everybody has watched the Zoom from Monday. If you find you don't have a lot of time and you are struggling with keeping up here in the group, because there's a lot of short videos, there's a lot of posts, there's a lot of food, the one thing you need to do is make sure that you watch the Zoom call. In fact, you don't even have to watch it because it's mostly just me talking. You can just listen to it while you are doing other things. Have it on in the background. I think that is probably the most important thing for you to do. On the Zoom call, we took our process of breaking strongholds to the next level. It's a really empowering week because this week we are learning to and practicing documenting and speaking truth over the lies. In the Monday night call, talked about the fact that there is no such thing as an eating event that just happens. Also, you learned that the enemy has no power to make you move or act. It takes agreement. It takes the enemy suggesting something and you agreeing with it and handing over your authority to the enemy. Authority is a powerful thing. You have all authority and the enemy has none. I wanted to remind you of that. That's in a nutshell what we talked about. But I want to talk about something really specific related to that today. So we know that there's two main types of eating that I focus on. There's, of course, lots of different eating issues. There's anorexia, there's bulimia, binge eating, compulsive overeating. But I really focus in on emotional and compulsive eating. And I want to specifically talk about speaking out loud when it comes to compulsive thoughts that you have. Now, a compulsive thought, remember, is not related to emotions. It's related to a situation. It's related to your senses. It's related to a time of day. It's related to a habit. So it's not necessarily related to feelings. And so when we're talking about compulsive eating and speaking out loud, this requires repetition. You may need to say something over and over and over and over because you are really, when we're talking about a habit or when we're talking about something that for many, many, many years, doing something attached to something else is so natural. In order to break that pattern, you have to hear yourself say something different. So I'll give you an example. And this is so common for people who feel they finish a savory meal and they actually feel like, oh my gosh, I'm so full, but they still have a strong compulsion to eat something sweet after. That is compulsive. That's not emotional. Those two things have been so tethered together for so long, eating something savory, then eating something sweet. You can replace that sweet thing with something that's appropriate, meaning it's not going to cause your body harm, but you're never going to break free of that compulsion when you replace the thing. Do you see what I'm saying? So if you're new to this and you're learning to not eat foods that harm you, replacing strawberry ice cream with some strawberries and heavy cream whipped up is good. But when you get to the point that you want to be free of the compulsion, I no longer want to feel compelled to eat something sweet after I have something savory or at the end of every meal, that's when you're ready to really tackle this speaking out loud. In that case, it can be something as simple as saying, I don't have to eat something sweet after I eat something savory. I never eat sweet foods at the end of my savory meals. I don't have to do that. Remember, you believe the words you hear yourself say. And so it's something you need to hear yourself repeatedly say before you even find yourself in that situation. Maybe as you're standing there and you're cooking your meal, and you know that every time after you eat, you get that compulsion for sweet. Maybe while you're cooking, you're saying, I don't eat sweet things after my meal. Once I'm full, I'm good to go. But you need to say it. You don't wait for it to be reality. You speak it and it becomes your reality. But it requires a lot of repetition. The other thing I wanted to talk about in relation to this, in relation specifically to compulsive eating, is that in the beginning, avoidance can be a good thing. For example, if you don't have the skills yet and you feel compelled just because other people are eating desserts and your neighbor's having a dessert party, you might want to steer clear of that and actually just not go to it in the beginning. Over time, though, feeling like you're missing out on what everybody else is doing and not being part of a social situation, you will become rebellious, and that will not bode well for you. So avoidance is okay as a beginner strategy. Stay away from things you don't have the skills to deal with. But that's not freedom. Just avoiding life, avoiding social situations is not the answer, because ultimately we are social people. We want to be around our friends. We don't want the fact that we don't eat a certain thing to define or control who and where we can be around. So avoidance is a very beginner strategy. And I'm going to encourage you that if you've been at this a while and you're using avoidance as a strategy, it's not going to work for you long term. The answer is exactly what we talked about on Monday night's call. It's identify what the enemy is tempting you with and then speak the truth over it. And when it comes to compulsion, you have got to speak it over and over. In the situation that I just said, just say your neighbor's having a dessert party. You have to, before you ever set foot, say you want to be around your neighbor, you love them, you love the other people that are coming to this party, and you want to be part of that event, before you ever step foot in there, you have to say, I'm not eating desserts. I don't eat sugar. I don't eat sugar. And I don't care if you say it 500 times. I never eat sugar. I don't eat sugar. I don't eat sugar. You have to be thoroughly convinced. And with compulsive eating, because it takes a long time to really sever compulsion, you need a very current script to override the old script that's in your head about what you have to do. And so repetition is key. But I guess I just really wanted to encourage you that avoiding things is a short-term strategy. It can work for a little while, but it doesn't work long-term, because in life you are going to have to wind up facing things. And if you can only eat clean in an environment that is sterile, again, you don't want to live in a bubble. We're not meant to live in a bubble. And then the first time you're exposed to those things that you've kept yourself clean by avoiding, you're going to give in. So I encourage you to push a little deeper, try a little harder, and just say, well, what would happen if I didn't use avoidance? What if I actually just face this thing? Another good example of that is I used to, in the beginning, when I would go in the grocery store and I would smell the bakery stuff, and I would just almost have to want to cover up my nose and avoid that section of the store. That's avoidance. But avoidance is also wrapped up in fear. Now I'm like, oh man, that smells really good. I can walk right into that situation. I can smell it. I can see it. I can look at it. I can even touch it. I just have decided I don't eat those things. I never eat bread and wheat. I never eat sugar. I'm so sure of that avoidance is not something. I don't have to live in fear that just because I smell something and even acknowledge that it smells good, it's not something I eat. I use the analogy of a scented candle. I actually have a candle that I burn that smells like bread. It smells like a bakery in my house, and I love the smell of it. But I would never think about eating that candle, even though it smells just like bread baking. It's the same thing when I'm walking to the grocery store and I smell actual bread baking. It smells really good to me, but I would never consider eating it. And so I want you to that level of freedom where you don't have to avoid. You don't have to be afraid to walk in a grocery store and you have to hold your nose because the smell of bread is intoxicating to you. You acknowledge, hey, that smells really good, but I don't put it in my body because I know it causes harm to me. I can appreciate it. can appreciate the smell. I can appreciate it even looks good, but it's not food. So anyway, think about maybe what are the areas where you're using avoidance to get out of certain situations, and think about how you can be bolder and face those things, and instead use the technique of speaking the truth and girding yourself up with truth instead of having to avoid something. Hope that helps somebody that's listening today. Hope you guys are having a wonderful week, and more than anything, I hope you are standing in your authority and speaking the truth over every single lie of the enemy. Remember, you have all authority and he has none. I think that's so wonderful. Don't hand over your authority for anything. It's not worth it. Talk to you guys soon.